Where were you living at the time?
St. Louis.
St. Louis. Okay. Why did you join?
I thought it was the right thing to do. Basically, my roommate was getting drafted in January, so I said I will volunteer because I was only 20 years old at the time, and I could have stayed probably another 6-8 months before I would have been drafted, before I would have been 21.
Right.
So I volunteered with him rather than wait because I wanted to go in the Air Force. And we volunteered, got shipped to Shepherd Field in Wichita Falls, Texas, took the exams. I passed, he failed the physical. He got shipped to the Army. 2 months later, I get a letter from him. He's in Africa. I'm in Randolph Field, San Antonio, Texas, to primary flight school. It was all ground schooling for 2 months before we went to Cimarron Field to learn to fly, and we learned to fly in the Fairchild open cockpit tandem.
Right.
You sit in front and your instructor sat behind you, and it was a little cool. If you could see some of the uniforms that we wore, I think you saw there one of them with the thing around you because they were open cockpit, and we were flying in November and December in open cockpit.
Right.
I went from there to primary and to secondary, and we were flying AT-6s, which was the old P-40 fighter plane. So then I went to Pampa, Texas, to twin engine, but I didn't want to be a fighter pilot, a twin engine pilot. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. Of course, I think every young lad wanted to be. But I graduated on March the 20th, 1943 from flight school, got my commission as a second lieutenant, and they give you your preferences to what you wanted to do. I wanted to go to fighter planes. They gave me 30-day leave, and I get a letter in the mail while I was home, and it was to report to Del Valle Field, San Antonio, in Texas anyway, and it was C-47's transition school. So we spent 30 days learning to fly the C-47, and then I got shipped to Knob Noster, Missouri, and joined the 77th Troop Carrier Squadron. Colonel Osmer was our squadron commander. He just passed away this spring. He flew for Eastern Airlines before. When he passed away or got out of the service, he had something like 38,000 flying hours.
Wow.
Between flying with Eastern and flying in the service. He was our squadron commander. All the time I was in squadron, we went overseas. We were stationed in England. He led our squadron every time we went on a mission. He did not send somebody else to lead the squadron. He flew himself. He was the pilot, led 56 planes in, and you probably have read about it when they broke out, when the Americans were surrounded at Bastogne. He led 56 planes in to drop supplies into them, and they broke out of the circle. The Germans hadn't surrounded them.
Wow.
He just passed away, not just back in the spring, but he was 92 years old. Wonderful guy. I'll never forget him.
Okay.
I came back after war. Well, I guess you want to hear about my service. So we got shipped overseas, and we were stationed in Nottingham. After I got to Nottingham, when we got to England, the area was fogged in where we were supposed to land, and I was circling, and I was getting low on gas, and I saw a nice little airport. Went down and landed, and taxied to the end of the runway and pulled off, and a weapons carrier pulled up alongside. I asked him, I says, can you tell me, the heading to St. Morgan, England? And he said, yes. I says, do you think I could get some gas? He said, no problem. So we get a taxied up there, and I says, got out of the plane, and he says, you know, you're my prisoner. I said, what do you mean? He says, you don't know where you are, do you? I said, no. He says, you're in Foynes, Ireland. You're our prisoner. We're a neutral country. So we proceeded to party. They got a hold of us. The American Attaché in Dublin contacted us and said, you know, just anything you want, you signed for it. So we partied pretty good. That didn't last too long though, because I guess we partied too good, and the commandant called me in and he says, you wouldn't want to escape, would you? And noticed that my plane was now taken out of the hangar and sitting out on the line, and so I felt pretty comfortable that we would escape sooner or later. So one morning about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and it was like a moonlight night out, you know. I mean, I don't think daylight would have been any brighter over there. I woke up the crew and we went down to the plane and thought we would have made a beautiful escape because never saw a soul all the time. We got on the plane, we taxied down to the end of the runway, and I checked out the engines and pulled out on the runway, and as I started running down the runway, I finally flipped on the lights, and here stood the whole first fighter group of Ireland standing alongside saluting us. Some guy had tailed me apparently for day and night because they knew every move I made, and never knew that I never saw none of them. I mean, we went down and taxied out, never saw a soul.
That's
But when I came down the runway here, they were all standing alongside the runway giving us the salute. So I got airborne and I contacted, they told me, if you can get gas in Belfast. So I contacted Belfast and they told me, says, hold your position. So I did, I held my heading, and all of a sudden I got 4 fighter planes saying, follow me. So they took us into Belfast and landed. And the gentleman came out and he says, take your personal belongings and come with us. And they took us and put us on the B-17, flew us to London, locked us up in the Piccadilly Hotel. I had a guard guarding me 24 hours a day. Every one of my crew had somebody guarding them 24 hours a day. We had to wait to come down to eat till after everybody had finished eating. And we would come down to eat. I would sit on one side of the room, my co-pilot's over there, my radio operator's over there, my flight engineer's over there. We don't get to talk to one another. I got two guys guarding me all the time. This went on for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, the major came in and sat down to have breakfast with me, and while we were having breakfast, he says, you're free to go. I said, what do you mean? He says, you're free to go. Here's your squadron commander's phone number and everything. So he left, and when he left, I motioned all the guys to come over here. Put your money on the table. He said, what do you mean? I said, put your money on the table. We're free. Nobody knows where we are. We'll enjoy London till our money runs out. So we had enough money at last. We partied pretty good for 4 or 5 days. And nobody knew. I says, we're here on the hotel. They're not going to kick us out. So we partied pretty good for 4 or 5 days. The money ran out, as always happens. And I called the commandant, and he sent a weapons carrier in to pick us up and took us back to the base. I figured that, you know, now I'd never seen my plane again, but sure enough, there was my plane locked up. We had all down through South America. When we went overseas, we went the southern route all the way down through South America, out to Ascension Island, a little 5 by 7 mile island out in the Pacific, 1,200 miles from nowhere. And we landed there, and then we went on to but all the way down through South America, we kept putting on a little nourishment. And we get over to Ascension Island. We went over then to Africa, went all the way up through Africa, and landed, got to Marrakesh, was our last stop in Africa, and when we moved from there, it was a 12-hour flight to England, a little over 11-hour flight to England. And as I said, we flew overcast all the way from Marrakesh up to England, and we get up there, and they're fogged in up there too. And as I said, we landed in Southern Ireland, and I guess we could have, you know, been a little more calm, I guess, but we partied pretty good, pretty heavy. And But I didn't find out after the gentleman told us we could be court-martialed and killed if we told anybody what happened. And I found out later, according to the Geneva Convention, we were not supposed to stay in that theater of war. We were supposed to have been sent back out of that theater, but they were in the build-up for the invasion, and they needed the planes and needed the manpower. So they kept us, but just threatened us that we would be crucified if we ever told anybody anything.
That's where they kept you.
Yeah. So
They couldn't just keep you on duty. They had to pretend like they
Yeah.
had you.
yeah. So we joined back and joined the outfit, and there was my plane still there, locked up. And the first thing we did was run in and take up the floorboards to see if all of our stuff, beverages were intact, and sure enough, nothing had been touched.
Got a long flight ahead of you.
And so we did pretty good. I had quite a few, so I had to ask the squadron commander as a favor, because I says, you know, can I have the pleasure of having a weapons carrier come out to my plane, because I've got something that I don't want nobody to see. So he wanted to know what I had, so I told him I had 40 cases of good beverage. So we proceeded to take it and lock it up in the in my room, and I was doing pretty good up until all practicing day and night with all kinds of formation flying and everything. And it came time for the invasion of Normandy, and we flew over in 12 plane formations. They had 3, 3, 3, 3, 3s, and in a V with the fourth 3 plane formation, and back in the backup. And we got to Normandy, and had a cloud bank right in our path, and we had to fly through a cloud bank. Amazingly, we went through the cloud bank, and that was because we had practiced formation together so much that we went through that cloud bank and came out in perfect formation. But we no more than got out of the cloud bank, and the German artillery got the other 2 planes in my formation. Only 3 guys got out of one plane, nobody got out of the other one. It literally exploded. And that bothered me for years still. I still see the thing, because I had gone all the way through flight school, everything with Hamlin. Me and him had been buddies for all the time in the service and everything, all through flight school, everything. And just to see his plane literally just explode in midair. The people on the ground said that you could just see parts flying every which way. It was just, so that's after the war, when I had the plaques made to put on the 2 buildings where the 2 planes got shot down.
Gotcha.
And but I stayed. We did resupply. Well, that day in Normandy, after they got shot down, I got back, and I was scheduled to fly that evening to tow a glider. And I got back, and I was probably 3/4 of an hour getting back. Everybody was waiting. They thought they had lost 3 planes, but I had gone down to treetop level when I got hit and made a circle. And I asked the jump master, I said, what do you want to do? Do you want to go back to England, or do you want to jump? And no, he said, we'll jump. So I turned and made a circle and came back, and the last guy that jumped, and he's still alive today, jumped. He said he could have reached out and put his hand on the beacon that they were jumping on. And I had no navigator or nothing. I had to keep track of my headings and everything and circle, and he came back and dropped them perfectly on target. I made another 180-degree turn and headed back for the coast. And as I turned over onto the channel, all of a sudden there's a dark object. I was down on treetop level, and there's a dark object in my way. And we pulled back on the stick as hard as I could, and I just cleared the battleship Texas. Was sitting there starting to shell the shore. So I get back to the base, and everybody was waiting, and they want to know what happened to the other 2 planes. I wouldn't tell them nothing, I just said they both got shot down. And I never did tell intelligence or anything. Because these guys were my friends, close friends. I've been all the way through flight school and everything, and as I said today, I can still see Hamlin literally exploding right in front of me. The squadron commander told me, "Then you're not flying tonight." And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "No, you're not." I says, "I'm gonna tow that glider tonight." He finally relented. I towed the glider in that night, and with no problems, we got in and back and no problem. Then we did resupply and everything, and as I said, I landed. One time I had gas for Hodges' army. I landed on the field in Orleans, France. Patton had overrun the field before the Germans could blow up the runways. The bombs were still alongside the runway. I landed on the runway between the bombs, and Patton's down there waiting. So while they're unloading the gas, he sends the general up to sit with me in the cockpit, and we sipped champagne while they unloaded the gas and everything. And he gave us some champagne and cognac to take back to the base. And that's when I called the squadron commander when I landed, and I says, "Could you have a weapons carrier meet me at the end of the runway?" And he's wanted to start asking questions. I said, "No questions. You come and see me later in the evening." So they sent a weapons carrier out. We put the 40 cases in and took it in and locked them up in my room. So I got shot down. Oh, that was sometime later. But when I got shot down, my squadron commander came up to see me, and he says, "Where's the key?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "The key to your room." I said, "Well, it's in my pants somewhere if you can find my pants." I said, "Why?" So he said, "Well, I want to get some of the beverage you have out of there." I said, "Well, what am I going to get out of it?" He said, "Well, I'll bring you up some, and I'll take some, and I'll send the weapons carrier up with some for the staff up here." So it was pretty good. The nurses and all appreciated having to get to sample some of the finer stuff.
Right.
So
Let's see what else we
What was your job assignment? Or
Huh?
What was your job? Or
I was
your
a pilot.
assignment? Okay. Did you see any combat?
Huh?
Did you see any combat?
Yes, but I certainly did.
Yeah.
In Normandy and in Holland. I got shot down in Holland on the third day of the invasion of Holland.
Okay.
I was towing a glider, and when I got hit and set on fire, I had my crew bail out, and there was no place for the glider to go, so I stayed with the plane towing the glider until we got to the edge of the field, and we were down. I kept watching that altimeter, and it kept getting lower and lower, but I couldn't leave because there was no place for the guy in them gliders to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed. When he cut loose, when he knew he could make the field, he cut loose, and we were 300 feet. I grabbed my parachute, which was laying on the. We wore a harness because we couldn't wear a chest packer as a thing. We had the harness on, and I grabbed the chest pack off of the navigator's table, and I got snapped on one side. I couldn't get the other side snapped on. The whole back of the plane was on fire and smoke. I couldn't see it, so I had to go back to the cockpit to snap on the other side of my parachute. And I looked at the altimeter, and it said 300 feet. I moved pretty quick through that flame to the back door and bailed out. And when I bailed out, I went to reach up with my hands, and here's the skin was just like clothes turned wrong side down, hanging off the end of my hand. But I hit the ground almost after that, and the wind was dragging me in towards the woods there, and I don't know what these two Dutch priests were doing there, but they were there, and they grabbed the parachute and wrapped me up with my parachute, and got the paratroopers to come and get me, and they come and got me. They took me to the field hospital there, and the doctor looked at me, and he says, "There's nothing. We're not prepared. We can't do nothing for this guy. And he's going to die if something isn't done." And there's paratroopers that came over in the woods and got me and said, "We'll have him out of here." and they got a Jeep and took me across 4 canals. They went ahead and they were putting planking across the canals and got me out of there. Last thing I remembered for 2 days, I got there and I told them, I said, I gotta urinate. And they said, well, we get a duck. And I said, you gotta get me on my feet. I can't lay down. So they got me up on my feet and I urinated, put me on the table in the operating room, and I woke up 2 days later in Brussels, Belgium. The little nurse trying to feed me. And they kept me there for 2 or 3 days. They decided they were going to send me to the States, and they sent me to Paris, and they got me to Paris. They had a plane waiting there in Paris to take me to the States, and the doctor came on board, and he says, he won't mind. They were all very encouraging. I could tell you it was really nice to lay and hear all these nice encouraging words all the time. He says that he won't live long enough to make it to the States. That's his name. Same guy, the guy over in Holland says he ain't gonna live if we don't get him out of here. Well, this guy said he won't live long enough to make it to the States. So they sent me from there to Southampton, England, and I kept I in and out of it. I keep looking at Christ. They had like 7 intravenous's going in all the time. They couldn't keep fluid in me. While they had my arms propped up like this, it was just a stream of water running off of my arms. I was pretty much out of it most of the time, and I don't know, about the 3rd day I was there, a gentleman come in and says, "Are you Jess Harrison?" I couldn't see him, and I says, "Yeah, that's me." I says, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm Jack Urbank." He was my jump master in Normandy for the paratroopers.
Oh.
And how come we was so good? He had been jump master on practice jumps in the States. He had done a couple of practice jumps with jump master in England, so we knew one another pretty good. And the guy, he had his hands got injured in Holland, and they sent him back to the hospital in England. And thought I get sent in there, and he sees my name up there, and he comes. And he used to come in and sit there for hours, talking to me to keep me awake, just to keep me thinking. Because I still say, today I would have closed my eyes and it would have been over. But he would not let me. He's come in there and kept talking and talking and talking, and he kept me. So finally, he got transferred out. But at that time, I was doing pretty good, and I had two nurses that were real great there all the time. Well, once I started to come around, as I said, my squadron commander came up to see me and wanted to know where the key was, and so he agreed that he'd take a case and he'd send the case up to the hospital there. These nurses, they were pretty good. They were hiding it for me, and I'll never forget the day they came in to pin the Purple Heart on me. He had just sent me up 8 bottles. And here I got 8 bottles in my room, and here they're coming in to pin a Purple Heart on me. So the nurses, they didn't know what to do, and they put them in the bed alongside of me between my legs, and I got them here, and the guy comes in to pin the Purple Heart, and he's trying to pull the sheet down so he can pin the Purple Heart on me, and I'm pulling the sheet up, and he's pulling it down. We're going back and forth. The guy finally pinned the Purple Heart up on my collar because I got all this lined up. And these 2 nurses were, real helpful, because they're standing down at the foot of the bed laughing like crazy because I'm going, and they're down there laughing like crazy at me. But he finally pinned the Purple Heart up on my collar and left, and so I was there for quite a while. They finally got me down. I was still bandaged up pretty good. My hands, you couldn't, and I mean, those 2 gals, they were unreal. They talked me into going to the officers club one night with them over there, and God almighty, I can't even pick up the glass. I've got the drink sitting on the bar, and I get down on the bar, and I'm tipping it over so I can drink it. They didn't think that was a very good thing for an officer to be doing, so they asked us to leave the club. But I thought that was very nasty because the drink was good.
Right.
I was having no problem.
Okay. Besides the Purple Heart, were you awarded any other medals or citations?
I got the Silver Star.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I got the Distinguished Flying Cross.
Right.
I got 2 air medals. I got the Purple Heart.
Mm-hmm.
I got the European Mediterranean Theater with 5 medal stars on it.
Right.
And I don't know what all the other junk. Those are the only ones. Those are the only ones that are pinned on you. The others are, the rest are, you're entitled to them, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, they don't pin them on you.
How did you get some of those? Like,
Well, I got the Distinguished Flying Cross for Normandy,
Mm-hmm.
for my actions in Normandy. I got the Air Medal for Normandy, in Normandy, and I got that. I forget what it was, but I got the Air Medal in Normandy, and I got a Distinguished Flying Cross in Normandy. I won the Silver Star and the Purple Heart
Mm-hmm.
in Holland.
Right. Okay. Were you ever a prisoner of war?
No,
Okay.
luckily.
Okay. Besides, you spoke about your 2 friends who passed away. Were there any other casualties in your unit?
My radio operator, we had a new plane when we got shot down in Holland, because the Virgin had towed so many gliders that the doors wouldn't close. So they gave me a new plane to go to Holland for Holland. So I got shot down. My crew all got out. When they went back, my radio operator, flight engineer, and were reassigned to the Virgin. They had a new pilot and co-pilot assigned to the plane. They were scheduled to take off for resupply, and my assistant flight engineer came out and asked the flight engineer if he could take that flight because he needed time to get his flight pay. They switched places. The plane took off. They made the run to France on resupply and came back. The whole squadron stayed in France. But these 2 young bucks that had just came over from the States, they were hotshot pilots, and they could make it back. Well, they did. They made it back to England, but they crashed into the mountainside and they all got killed. That was the end of the Virgin. But my radio operator, Charles Darby, got killed in that, and the assistant flight engineer all got killed.
Wow.
So my crew, the only one that was left was my flight engineer, and he stayed there in the squadron, and came back to the States, and he just passed away this spring in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
But my co-pilot in Holland, he got second and third degree, got second degree burns, I guess, in Holland, and was hospitalized, and I have never been able to trace him down anywhere. Nobody, it's just like he completely left this world, because I have never been able to find, outside of being treated in the hospital in Holland, I have never been able to find any paperwork or nothing on him.
What was your life like in the service? For instance, how did you stay in touch with your family?
Email, or V-mail, or what do they call it? It wasn't email.
Okay. Did you feel a lot of pressure or stress
No,
when you were there? No.
I too much party time.
How much did the Pearl Harbor and all that, how long did that stick with you as a big part of what you were doing? What was part of?
Well, Pearl Harbor, as I said, when that happened, my roommate was scheduled to be drafted, and I says, well, you know, I'm gonna be drafted before the year's out, before, you know, 42 is out. So I said, let's go down and volunteer, and we'll go in the Air Force. I don't wanna go in the infantry, you know, let's go in the Air Force. And, as I said, he failed the test to go to pilot training, and back then, they were building up infantry, so he didn't stay in the Air Force to get to go to mechanic school or anything. He was shipped right out to infantry. And they said 2 months later I found he was in Africa. But he's still alive today.
Was there something special you did for good luck, like any little thing maybe that you and your friends might have done?
No.
No?
I just say a few prayers.
Okay. What were some of the countries you traveled to while in service?
Well, from France, Holland, England. We were in England. Of course, I was in Northern and Southern Ireland. On the way over, we were in Marrakesh, Africa. All up down through South America. We were in Brazil and Ascension Island, over all over the coast of Africa up to Marrakesh.
Right.
To get through to Marrakesh, you had to go through a mountain pass, and we started into the mountain pass, and we was 9,000 feet into the pass, and I'm talk about dust storm. They was the grasshoppers. You never, I mean, my God, they was grasshoppers like you never saw. I mean, in that dust storm. So we turned back out and landed in Senegal. I think that was the name of the airport, Senegal. The town was across the river from the airport. So of course my radio operator and flight engineer, they had to go over to get a little beverage. And I got in the plane and fell asleep, and I get up the next morning. I don't know how they got back. They were underneath the plane, passed out, and we stayed an extra 2 days before they finally came around. I don't know what kind of jungle juice they got over there, but for 2 days,
Yeah.
they didn't know where, they didn't know nothing. But we had to stay a couple of days till they finally came around, so we could fly on to Marrakesh, and the pass had cleared up, so we could fly through the mountain pass.
Of your time in the service, what was maybe like a few of your most memorable experiences
Oh, gee.
or events or something?
Well, some of the funny one. My squadron commander called me in and said, "Would you take the command car and go into London and get Darby, my radio operator?" And I go in, and he had told me where to go, and I go in. The MPs had him, and I says, "Could I see Darby?" And he says, "Well, yeah, okay." And I says, "What do you got him on?" He says, "Out of uniform." I said, "What do you mean out of uniform?" Well, he had got a derby hat and a cane and a jacket, and he thought he was Winston Churchill. He was walking down the street. I mean, he hadn't had only 1 or 2 drinks, he told me, but yeah. But he was kind of out of uniform, but they let him go. I signed for him, and they never did call him back. And so he was I had quite a crew. We had taken the laundry to Nottingham, England once to have the laundry done, and I get back to the plane, and I'm waiting, and they don't show up, and I said, well, might as well go to the MP station. I go there, sure enough, they've got the 2 guys locked up. So they said, what do you got them on? And, the guy showed me the thing. He got them on about 8 or 10 charges. I says, could I talk to him? And he says, yeah. I said, well, go get him, bring him out, let me talk to him. Well, he did. He went to get him, and when he did, I took the page out of the book and put it in my pocket. And when he come out with the guys, I said, okay, guys, let's go. And he says, they can't go. He says, what charges you got them on? And he went and looked in the book, and no page. he couldn't do nothing. If he wanted to do anything, he had to go get some higher rank than me. He got to go get a captain or on up
Right.
to come before they can even search me.
So he's like,
So I said, okay, guys, let's go. He's not going to do nothing because he's not going to let them know that he let this happen. So we walked out. No, they kept me occupied. They were great. They were good guys, though. I mean, they were unreal. I'll show you a picture. The Darby
Do you want me to
was
get your thing?
an artist on Cape Cod, and I guess he was a good artist, except the Artists Association down there tells me that he only painted enough to support his lifestyle. He was a gay blade, and he liked to party, but he painted pretty good. The Artists Association thought so much of him that on the very tip of Cape Cod is a cross, and on the cross it just says Charles S. Darby, Galleon Soldier, and it's got the dates of the service that he lived in. I can show you a picture.
Do you want me to grab your photo album?
Huh?
Want me to get your photo album for you?
Was it on the wall?
Is it on the wall?
I don't know whether it's there or not. I may have to show it to you out of one of my pictures, but it was unreal. They went out and put this right on the tip of Cape Cod. I can give you a copy of the photo, but it's and they go out every year. They've got roses planted around it, and every year they go out, come spring, and they go out there and clean the place all up and everything. And you can take a boat to go out to see it. You can walk out there if you want to walk through the briars and the bramble for about 2 miles. You can walk out, but if you got the boat, you can just go up to the point and see it. And I thought it quite a tribute. They thought so much of him that they did that. But he was a guardian angel for the rest of my crew. He took care of course, Joachim, my flight engineer, he was like an 18, 19-year-old kid, so Darby just took him under his wing, and we got along great. I had my navigator was a little, as I said, I think that's the reason we landed in Ireland anyway. My navigator came out from Ireland. I took him to Kansas City to get him sworn in as an American citizen. He was here and went all the way through schooling and everything, and was still Irish citizen. And I went and stood up for him and got him sworn in as an American citizen in Kansas City, Missouri. And I don't know whatever I don't know whatever happened to him. You'll see him. He's there in that picture. You can see there. He was there, but.
Is it okay if I grab the photo album? Maybe you explain some of the photos in them?
Is it the photo albums or the ones on the wall?
Well, because they're all the same.
You want to see?
Do you want to pause this for a sec?
Renee, there's my crew.
Can you point out the people in your crew? Are these the people that we were? Back one more.
It won't show up. I mean, if you. That's my navigator. That was the navigator, Canavan. And there's my flight engineer. And this is, that was me. There's Hazelwood. He was my co-pilot for up until, for just before Holland. He got his own plane. And that was my radio operator, that's Darby. But I don't know, they must be better pictures. See, there shows them. Well, that shows Darby and them a little better.
There's the crew right there.
Yeah, this is the real reason this is in here. This is we were doing a practice jump in the States. Those three guys, as luck, or I don't know whether luck or what you would want to call it. I got those three guys jumped in Normandy out of my plane. They did a practice jump in the States out of my plane, and those same 3 guys. This guy got killed. He was the first guy to jump in Normandy, and he got killed just as he was jumping out. He got killed. He was the only guy we lost. All the rest of them got down. He got killed in Normandy just as he was going out the plane. They didn't find his body for about 6-7 days later.
Wow.
But
Maybe maybe if I can like have some notifications on the wall.
Go for it.
now, I don't know where to start looking here. This is a picture when I was first in primary flight training, and when it was in the wintertime, and we were flying open cockpit planes. So, as you can see, I've got the helmet, the goggles, the scarf, and the fur-lined jacket on because we were flying in the open cockpit planes, and it so happened to be November and December that we were doing that. This is in primary flight, and as you can see, well, we writing to some girls somewhere, I don't know, but this is the picture of the whole group that was taking primary flight lessons, and as you can see, they pretty well dressed up to keep frostbite, so you don't get frostbite in Norman, Oklahoma in November and December and January. We were there. The picture over on the next page is, as you see, is my hat that's up on the dummy, and just has the ribbons that I'm won and entitled to wear. This is the picture when the plaques were installed in on the buildings over there of my 2 planes that got shot down, and these people all lived in the area. This 2 people kneeling, one of them is this one is a policeman in Paris. He does guide tours, and this guy is also a guide. And this is my plane that created a confusion after we were shot down in Holland, and we didn't get shot down in that plane, but my radio operator got back reassigned to it. He's the one that painted the gal on the plane. It was a beautiful thing. The only problem was, and it created a lot of confusion, that when he was painting, the bra straps happened to break. And,
that's too bad.
And that created a lot of problems for me, but I think I would have taken a court-martial before I would have let him fix the bra straps. So, but they stayed on there, and my radio operator, who was an artist, had painted it on there. He wound up getting killed in it. But after I got shot down and he went back and was reassigned to the plane, they made him paint censored across Virgin. I don't know what that meant, if they paint censored across. She was still Virgin. This is the flight we flew for the night that we started World War II in the invasion of Normandy. And you can see all the dots as the places where they were dropping paratroopers. The 435th 77th Squadron, we came in across the island and dropped near St. Mary Église. Our paratroopers in there at 1:20 in the morning, and it shows our path going back. I had this doctored up a little because the group, this is the way I went back. According to them, we were supposed to come up here. The rest of the crew that went, but I was all alone. The rest of them went back over here and flew back up. But I come across, and when I got out here, I was headed for England. No playing around. I didn't have time. I had made a circle and had was late getting out of there. I had plaques made, the 2 planes that got shot down in Normandy. I had plaques made with all the guys' names on the plaques. One plane, this plane landed just across the road. The road runs right there, just next to those 2 gentlemen. And the plane crashed over here in the field, just across the road. And that, the pilot and the co-pilot, the whole crew, and all the paratroopers are on that plane. And there's the three guys on the bottom that got escaped out of that plane. Was the only 3 people that survived out of the whole thing. This on here is Hamlin's plane, which is the 2 buildings set kind of like that, cocked a little bit from one, and the road is still running out here. And this is Hamlin's plane with all the crew and all the paratroopers that got killed.
Good.
Over on the next page here shows the people that lived in that house on that night whenever the thing happened, and their 2 daughters are still alive, and that's the husband and the wife and their 2 daughters, and they had to have their picture taken next to the plaque where Hamlin's plane crashed, which is up here on the right side. You can see here's where Hamlin's plane, and 4 young girls had to go out and get their picture taken alongside that pile of rubble. That may have been exciting in that time in France. I don't know. You know, we found better excitement than looking at that. But this is there's the guy in France drew this picture up for me, and it shows my plane, and it shows how close we were to the ground when the guys are shooting at me. But as I said, I went home with 56 bullet holes, some kind of holes in the plane, and never once did they rupture the gas tank or anything. Nothing. I was the plane was in perfect safety, except it had 56 holes in it. And the next one shows Holland, and when I got shot down in Holland, and this shows my plane and me hanging in my parachute. Here, the gentleman has written a book about that, and I can't think of the name right now, but he has written a book, and that's where I got the picture from, was out of his book. And he had did a lot of research to know that my plane, that was my plane. He got the tail numbers and everything, and that was in San Holland. And that just shows that one there was the thing when I got to distinguish that's the Purple Heart, awarded for wounds received as a result of any enemy action in the European theater of operation. Also on the bottom here is showing the others. I got the Distinguished Flying Cross for in Normandy. I got the Silver Star in Holland. I got the Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters. One Air Medal in Holland, Air Medal in Normandy, and Air Medal for I forget which one, Bastogne I think it was. And I got European American Theater Award ribbon with a 5 bronze stars.
Okay.
And I don't know what you want. There's the picture of my.
Yeah, we've got.
And my friend with a cap with all the things on it, all the awards and some of the medals that I'm entitled to wear. And the glider is the CG-4A glider that we used in Normandy, and we used in Holland. I was towing one of them with 10 men and a Jeep in it when we got shot down in Holland. The original glider was built in Deep River, Connecticut. That's how I wound up getting to Connecticut and wound up meeting my bride. I got sent up here to check out the first CG-4A glider that they built in Deep River. And while I was here, I met my bride in a restaurant having dinner one evening, and I was sitting across the room, and she was fumbling trying to light a cigarette, so I proceeded to go over and light her cigarette and ask them what her and her girlfriend were doing for the evening, and they said nothing important, and we went out dancing all night, and we danced all night, every night for about 2 weeks until the squadron commander called me and he says, you did intend to come home, didn't you? So I said, well, I will think about it, and a few days later we did. It was a very exciting trip going back because I towed the glider back to Carolina, North Carolina, down over New York City and Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. Created a lot of excitement. Back then, today they would shoot me down, but back then, when they saw me going over New York, I get a lot of static over the radio, but I kept flying on. So I went over New York City towing a glider, and didn't get killed. This is part of the living history. I was down to speak at Frederick Community College in Frederick, Maryland, and they had. It's where I met some very interesting people. I think I explained I met a young girl down there that came and had medals that her father had earned, and never knew that he had even earned medals until he passed away. And they found them, and they didn't even know what they were. So I spent quite a bit of time talking with them and explaining all the different medals that the gentleman had won. And it was a shame that probably his family would have loved to have heard some of the stories attached with the different medals, because he had done a good job. And somehow they talked us into getting remarried after 60 years. And you can see, Father, we're taking our vows again, so we got a guarantee for another 60, so.
Oh, it's great.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And as you said, we kind of, I don't know whether he was jealous or not, but I mean, we were kind of living it up. We still had a little spunk left in us, so we kept working on it. We kept hanging in there. And this is my daughter and our son there, and this is great grandson Jesse Harrison Gassick. This is our daughter and our grandson and our great granddaughter Maggie. So this is just more of the people that were at our 60th wedding.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Are we gonna come back to the interview?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Do you recall the day your service ended?
Yes, I do.
Where were you? Can you tell me a little bit about it?
I was in Santa Ana, California, and my wife's brother was getting married, and I was still stuck in the service. And I said, well, you get on the plane and you go to the wedding, and you stay in Connecticut, and I will be there shortly, because I've got to go through the thing to telling these people I want to go home too. So she came to the wedding, and I finally got out.
Okay. What did you do in like the days and the weeks afterwards?
I got out of service. I went. Well, I probably spent a couple of months relaxing and enjoying life, and then I went to work for Johnson Control, and I worked for Johnson Control for, I think, about 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I quit, and
What's that?
You gotta rewind it.
I think it's okay from there because when he got out, you just go back to what he did. A couple, weeks and months
Okay,
after
so
getting out.
like your work. You were talking
Yeah.
about your work, like what you did afterwards.
When I got out of service after living the life of Riley, I guess, for a couple of months, I went to work for Johnson Control. They did all kind of industrial and commercial control work, factories, office buildings, whatnot. I worked for them for roughly 35 years, and I had a chance to take the contract to take care of the instrumentation for Pfizer Chemical in Groton. So I went in business for myself, and I worked with them. It's hard, probably 10 years. I stayed working until I was about between 68 and 70 years old before I finally said, this easy work is not good. It'd be better if I started traveling and with the wife and the kids. So I finally gave it up and have been retired since, just enjoying life and enjoying the family. And
Right. Okay. Did you make any close friendships while you were in the service?
Yes, and as I said, I did with paratroopers. I've got a couple of paratroopers that are still close friends, Ray Geddes and Don Kane, who both jumped out of my plane in Normandy, and the jump master, Jack Urbank, he just passed away out in Ohio. I've got a very close friend, he's an author now, Jerry McLaughlin, whose uncle was a navigator on one of the planes that got shot down in Normandy, and he has now written a book. Well, he has written several books, but he wrote one book especially about Normandy. Is 60 years from D-Day when he finally wrote the book. And the title on the book, I've got some D-Day plus 60 years, and he wrote it. And it's he's got pretty much all of everything that happened to him. He was only a baby at the time when that happened, so it was something that he was interested in. And he went back. He finally found me after probably 55, 60 years. He found me, and then when he went over to France and went to the site and took pictures and everything and wrote his book on D-Day 60, and he's has written some other books, but I was just down to the reunion in Arlington, Virginia, with him and his friends.
Okay. Did you join a veterans organization?
Yes, I belong to the DAV and the VFW. I'm life members in both of them.
Okay, good. Okay. Did your military experiences influence your thinking about the war or like the military in general?
Oh, not really.
No. Right, because you chose to go in.
I feel sorry for our guys because I think we've been misled and some of our guys have been in harm's way, which should never have happened, but it has, and it's a credit to the United States and to the people of this country that that these men have gone and served, and you've heard very little complaint. The guys that I think it's a credit to our country that they have done this a lot, and a lot of them are volunteers that have volunteered to do this, and especially the guys that have gone into the National Guard and looking to pick up an extra dollar, and wound up having to go to Iraq and Iran and all these other places. You know, and it's just, but it's.
Right. Okay. How did your service and experiences affect your life, do you think?
I don't know.
No?
I was young, gay blade, and I don't know that it really had any effect on me.
Right. Okay.
As I said, I got out of the service. I got married while I was still in the service. I got out of the service. My wife is pregnant. I haven't got time to parade or complain. I got to work. I got to work and support a family.
Yeah.
So
Okay. What kind of activities does your post or association do, like for the veterans organization and stuff like that?
would you?
Like, what kind of activities? You mentioned that you were in a veterans organization, like the VFW. What kind of activities do you guys do?
Well, I haven't done that much. I attend their meetings. And I try to contribute some. I do anything I can
Right.
for them. But I mean, it's, I'm not that active in the organizations. I belong to them all. I go to their meetings, but as I said, my children and my family and everything. I want to spend as much time as I can with them, so it's that takes 99% of my time, so I got about 1%. But I had very little time in between. I was active in politics for some 40-odd years, so I was on the. I started out in Rocky Hill when we under the old selectman form of government. The year I started in politics, the selectmen, under the selectman form of government, the first selectman got 200 votes and was elected first selectman.
Wow.
So that was my first experience. I was on the finance board and chairman of the finance board under the selectman form of government for several years, 6-8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got the council form of government, and I was on the council for years, and I wound up something like 46 years of service to my town.
Yeah.
I finally said it's time to hang up the banner and sent home and watch the other people make a fool of themselves.
Is there anything you'd like to add or speak of that I haven't covered? Any experiences before, during, after?
Oh, I don't know. I've had so many. I've just enjoyed it. As I said, took me something like 50-odd years to finally find the paratroopers that bailed out of my plane in Normandy. I go to their reunions, they go to my reunions. We became real close, and we've had a great time. As I said, the nephew of one of the navigator on one of the planes that got killed in Normandy has written a book. We get together with him off and on. We were just down in Alexandria, and he was there, and this Joe Balichek, I think is his name, he's an author that wrote all about Normandy. Joe went to Normandy and lived in Normandy for 6 months, gathering all the information he could before he wrote about, because he was interested in Utah Beach, where we lost 5,000 young men to get ashore on Utah Beach in Normandy. Mm-hmm. He went over there before he ever started to even think about writing. He lived there for 6 months to get to know the people, know the area, and everything before he started writing a book. And he's written a book. I've got a copy of it now, but it's quite a book. And when we we lost 5,000 young guys just getting ashore at Utah Beach alone.
Yeah, I mean, and how many? You know, a couple hours.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah,
know.
because it wasn't what, somewhere along the line, our photographs were wrong. Those guys came ashore, they had to climb a bank to get ashore. They didn't come ashore on the beach,
Right.
which they were supposed, which the picture showed.
Mhm.
And I've got some pictures I've taken of it. You can see the foxholes and everything up on top, looking right, the guys are right up on top looking right down at them, you know,
Really?
unreal.
Pretty amazing.
All right.
It's great. Thank you.
All right. Well, that concludes our interview.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay. Why did you shut that off?
I'm good at opening it this time, too. It's like, cool. How cool is that?